This your man, the STL stranger, Umar Lee, joining you on a somber occasion outside of the Metropolitan Taxi Cab Commission on 2600 block of Delmar. Cab driver friend of mine, Boris, murdered 2 nights ago. Joins a long list of St. Louis cabbies that have been murdered over the years. Another guy I know, Tim Grice, killed a couple years ago in the Central West End. Boris killed 2 nights ago in the St. Louis Place neighborhood. Body thrown into the street. Car then driven to Castleport neighborhood in North County and abandoned. The first day I drove a taxi, Kenny Whitehorn, the general manager of Laclede Cab, told me, "You know this is a dangerous job." And I said I knew because I went to school with a girl whose father was murdered driving an Allen cab. So we know without a doubt that driving a cab in St. Louis has been a dangerous job, and many cabbies throughout history in St. Louis have given their lives in the line of duty in service to the community. There's no doubt a cab driver is someone in service to the community. It's a hustle job, but you're out dealing with the whole microcosm of society. Now, a little bit of info about the taxi industry is that summertime is always slow. It's historically always been a slow time of the year. And when business is slow, a lot of times drivers will start taking risks. They'll start taking chances with safety. So summertime becomes dangerous for cab drivers, and it's also the most dangerous time of the year in the city of St. Louis, where the shooters are out. You add to that the rideshare technology equation, which is not going nowhere, Uber and Lyft. You know, we fought that good and we lost. But with rideshare, the cab industry is decimated, and drivers are hurting, and drivers are struggling. So they're taking more and more chances, more and more risk with personal safety. And Boris, in the stories all throughout St. Louis media, was an immigrant. Had served, was a linguist in the Soviet Union, had served in the Soviet military, had traveled throughout Africa and the former Muslim republics of the Soviet Union. In the chaos and the collapse of the Soviet Union in the late 1980s, he comes to the United States and becomes a cab driver for decades and an owner. Raises 2 children, 2 successful children, has a loving wife and a loving marriage, and unfortunately his wife passed of cancer. But I'm personalizing this story because I don't have time for anybody who says it's just the way they count the numbers, it's just the statistics, it's just that. I don't have any time for the urbanist fetish, the hipster urban fetish. This is a dangerous city. I don't give a damn how you parse the statistics. This is a dangerous city. And the poorer you are, the more working class you are, the more dangerous it gets, especially for African American. And so we have to contemplate on each murder. We have to contemplate on each loss of life. What kind of city are we that when someone gets murdered, we ignore it? Or that when we see the high murder rate, our response is, well, it's just the way they count the numbers. This should not be normal for a man to get shot in the head and his body to get dumped in the street, just working hard, trying to take care of his family, trying to make a living. That should not be normalized in society. There are countries when someone is murdered, it's a national news story for days because murder is so unique in those societies. Murder is so frequent in St. Louis and in many other cities in this country that we don't blink an eye. We barely even notice it. So we have to mourn the loss of Boris as someone who contributed a lot to the St. Louis metropolitan area, as someone who really found the American dream for his children in the St. Louis metropolitan area and died of an American nightmare with a gunshot to the head in North St. Louis. And I'm going to take this time also to call out, a lot of it political excitement because of the young Latino woman of Puerto Rican heritage for the Bronx in New York City. I see a big divide between this kind of socialistic, communistic rhetoric, which, I'm lukewarm on. Some of it I care for and some of it I don't. I'm mostly concerned with the end results and support for working class people. Because what you often see is people happy with this rhetoric, but these were people that had no concern for cab drivers when Uber was coming to St. Louis and Lyft was coming to St. Louis. They had no concern for how this would affect drivers. Their only concern was how this would get them from the craft brewery to the latte shop to the dog park, to their Bernie Crat meeting, to the kickball game. And when I said cabbies are going to be hurting, they said, "Oh, you're antiquated. Oh," I had a bunch of rich kids who were supposedly socialists and this and that lecturing me, a cab driver, on the cab industry. So in memory of Boris, I put up the middle finger and I say, fuck you. R.I.P. Boris, another sad and tragic loss here in St. Louis. If you want to help the family, Laclede Cab has set up a donation. You can drop by 600 South Vanderbilt, and I've been told that donations will reach the family of Boris.